video, I want to talk a little bit about reincarnation and past life experiences. So if you've ever had an experience where you have a flashback from a scene of a previous lifetime, I'm sure this video will really resonate with you. And if you haven't, I'm going to go into some of the reasons why, again, you may not have had an experience yet like this in this lifetime. So for myself, I have had several of these flashback type events throughout this particular incarnation. And each and every time it happens to me, it's such a powerful experience. And I want to take a moment and explain a little bit of how it works in terms of how I experience it. So it's usually when I'm in quite a quiet meditative state, but it can also be in conjunction with meeting other energies or meeting other individuals that I know undoubtedly I have spent lifetimes with before. And when I run into these particular individuals, there's this energetic exchange that often triggers a series of dream-like states. And it can be sort of a lucid dreaming state where, in the early morning hours or right before I go to bed, it's like I'm transported back into another time and I'm seeing through the mind's eye these reels or these it's almost like a movie screen sort of an experience, but I'm in the movie and I'm seeing it through the eyes of a different character, which is not me, but it's me. It's a very, very transcendental experience and one that I've come to expect because it has happened to me so regularly throughout my lifetime. Not, every week, it might be every couple years, but it triggers a remembrance of a previous life. And the other thing that I've noticed about these past life experiences that happen is a lot of times they are also tethered to a certain fear or a certain trauma that I'm now trying to work through in my current life path. So it will have an experience or it will illuminate for me why I have a certain tendency towards something because it really loops back to a very traumatic or very intense experience in this previous lifetime. And oftentimes as well, it's kind of interesting because these individuals that I've run into will have this dialogue and they very much have the exact same recognition. Now, they can't always put their finger on it in terms of, they may not be somebody that's particularly spiritual or open to paranormal type experiences. They just have a feeling that they've been here before. There's some deja vu, or they have a similar kind of resonance in terms of their experience with a past trauma that is very much linked to or triggering upon the meeting of, again, the two energies. So some of the reasons that we will remember our past life experiences. Again, it's very linked to generational patterns, to our own soul's blueprint and the lessons that we are meant to learn. Sometimes through, again, going through some of these previous incarnations, we can see how perhaps we mishandled a situation or a lesson in a previous lifetime, even karmically. And this is our opportunity in this incarnation to almost have a do-over or to essentially get it right in this lifetime. And that's very much in line with the way that the wheel of karma and the way that the karmic system works. So that is a reason why the divine matrix may allow a soul to have a vivid remembrance of a previous incarnation. Now, if you have not experienced this past life remembrance or this sort of deja vu feeling that has along with it a very, very detailed scene or multiple scenes of that lifetime, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you are spiritually less developed, or, you're not given this divine gift. Having a remembrance of past life experiences does have the ability to infringe on one's own free will, depending on the soul. And if the particular soul that may or may not have this experience would have a tendency to get overly caught up in the energy of a previous lifetime, then that information won't be given to them. Previous life experiences are not meant to be stumbling blocks. They're meant to propel us forward. And if our soul's perspective or the level of our consciousness has reached a certain understanding of universal laws, how creation works, then giving them this knowledge would not infringe on the work they're doing. They would understand that, again, there are multiple incarnations, that each and every time we go through a life experience within physical form, that it's not meant to draw us back into the energy of that previous lifetime or hold us in that energetic pattern. It's more framework, it's more context. So if we can see that previous life experience or any of our previous lifetimes simply from the vantage point of context in terms of our own soul's growth and evolution, then this information will be given to us knowing that it's not going to affect our current life's trajectory in terms of it having a negative outcome. So for myself, again, I don't really fixate my consciousness on previous lifetimes or on individuals that I've shared previous life experiences with. I am very much anchored in the now moment, anchored in what it is I'm doing and the lessons and evolution of my consciousness, of my soul, as it relates to this particular incarnation. And I don't go down the rabbit hole, essentially. So I'm not going to get obsessed or get overly fixated on those previous lifetimes. In fact, I'm not going to say that they have no meaning. I just know in terms of what's happening in this particular lifetime, I don't get all hot and bothered about it, I think is the best way to put it. And so, again, you can also have an experience in terms of your lifetime where this will happen quite late in the game. You may go through your 20s, 30s, 40s, and all of a sudden you have this very, very vivid or multiple really intense experiences of previous lifetimes. The other thing that you will notice if you are picking up the energy or that energetic patterning of a previous lifetime, a previous incarnation, is oftentimes you'll actually be drawn to certain geographical regions, certain periods in history. You'll really have, almost this affinity for certain periods of time and the way in which human society or the human family operated in those periods of history. And especially if you are an old soul that has incarnated on planet Earth multiple times, then you will remember multiple lifetimes. This has been my experience. I have a deep remembrance of multiple different historical periods and multiple and many different regions on the planet. So again, it gives me this view or this loving energy for really the planet in its entirety, all cultures, all regions, all periods of history. And again, it's part of that context, knowing that the evolution of consciousness itself was vastly different as we moved through the ages. And as our consciousness has continued to develop, we are given, through this expansion and sometimes contraction, different tools terms of technologies, how we are either very interconnected or very isolated from our human family. There can be periods of time where there is, a lot of enlightenment and the population's consciousness really expands. And then we can go into these periods of a descent in terms of our consciousness where, again, by the very nature of free will, the collective human consciousness will essentially downgrade itself. It does this to learn contrast. Every time there is an expansion and a contraction, expansion is really about that evolution, and the contraction is really about learning through opposites and learning through that state of contrast. So it is interesting if you have gone through some of these past life experiences. I'd love to hear, some of your stories about that. I may in upcoming videos share some of my past lives. I'm not sure how interesting, how interested anybody would be in some of those scenarios. I find them, a little bit unique, and certainly not sure if it's something that at this point I'm really willing to share. I'm still kind of on the fence about that, but it's certainly an interesting topic, and it definitely lends itself into that perspective, or the knowing that there is so much more that is going on in terms of our reality than we can tangibly see, taste, touch, and feel. There's so much more going on energetically behind the scenes, and really in terms of our consciousness itself, that it is able to take this information and bridge it together throughout multiple lifetimes and really learn these very, very powerful soul lessons. I'm going to wrap this video up. I just thought it was an interesting topic in terms of, something, food for thought, and something to think about, this weekend. I know I was sitting down and meditating and really projected myself into some of those previous experiences, and wanted to sit down and make a little video about that. So again, we'll see you in the next video, and wishing you all a very beautiful week.